All right, welcome back for the 5th flow in the Pigeon series. Now, if you're just tripping across this video and you don't know what the Pigeon series is, this is just a series of videos and practices to help you improve your experience in pigeon posture. So if this is something you're interested in checking out, you can go into the description below. All the videos in the description, I will have a link back to the very first welcome video, but also just to the general playlist so that you can kind of see everything that exists in this series so far. But for today's practice, we're going to be down on the mats. You might want a towel for your knees if you need any extra cushioning, 2 yoga blocks or yoga block-like objects. And as far as what I'm going to use, that's all I'm going to use. If at any point in the practice you find yourself needing to support yourself, fill in some gaps, whatever you need, just try your best to be creative with objects you have around you in your home that you might be able to use to help support you in today's practice. But aside from that, we can get started. So we are going to start off on our knees with our knees apart towards the edges of the mat, toes coming together to touch behind you in the back. And we're just going to walk our hands out into a child's pose. So I'm going to keep my forehead up for a moment while I talk here because I've got my microphone. But you're just going to let your forehead rest on the floor. Arms are outstretched in front of you. If it's more comfortable, they can be down alongside your legs. And we're just going to take a few nice full breaths here. Really feeling that full back body fill with air as the rib cage expands. And then feeling how everything just kind of shrinks back down as you exhale. And letting your body sink down between those legs with each breath that you take, getting heavier and heavier into the mat. You can lift your head for a moment, long enough just to walk your hands over to the right-hand side of your mat, noticing what happens with your left hip, your left bum cheek, relative to your left heel. If it lifts away, that's fine. You can also kind of anchor your left hip back towards that heel if you want to. But we're just going to bring foreheads back to the floor here so that we've added a little bit of a side bend to this child's pose. We're just warming up the spine here. And you might notice that in this side bend position, one side of your rib cage, one side of your back, fills and expands easier than the other. Lift the forehead, walking the hands back across the mat over to the left-hand side. Same idea, check in with what happened at your right hip and your right knee, or sorry, not knee, heel. Walking those hands forward, resting the forehead down, and then just noticing the expansion in your back, switching sides. All right, lift your forehead, walk your hands back through center. Now we're going to lift ourselves away from our feet, coming to our bellies on the mat. Stacking elbows under shoulders with the forearms on the floor, hands splayed on the floor, and just lifting into a Sphinx pose, just introducing a bit of spinal extension in a really gentle way. Again, if you feel that pressure in the low back or any pinching, you can play with that pelvic tilt, tucking that tailbone down, pubic bone grounding into the floor. See if that helps you out. Okay, we can lower our chest back down to the floor, hands come back to the mats. We're gonna push back into child's pose again. Come back out through table, back to our bellies. And this time we're gonna take that spinal extension just a little bit higher. So we're going to have the hands out front and out to the side ever so slightly, so that as we press up, we're a little higher. Our arms are straight out in front of us. And again, check in with your low back, check in with what your pelvis maybe can do to help you out if necessary. We're strong through the arms, but the elbows are not just locked out or hyperextended. We're strong through the shoulders. We're pushing away from the ground, creating space through the joints and keeping those upper shoulders down away from the ears. Okay, we can slowly lower ourselves back down. Once again, hands are going to come below the shoulders. We're going to push back into a child's pose again, and we're going to go back into those side bends, but we're just going to flow through this a little quicker. So spend 2 breaths in normal child's pose. Walk the hands over to the right. 2 breaths here. Walk the hands all the way over to the left. 2 breaths here. Bringing your hands back to center, and we're going to find ourselves in table here. So we're just going to go through a couple cat-cows. So inhaling as you drop the belly, chest rises. Exhaling as you curve into a cat back. Inhaling cow. Exhaling cat. Taking this at your own pace and just noticing the sensations that happen along your spine as you move from one position to the other. Noticing the integrity through your hands and your shoulders and your rib cage. Are you locking anything out, hyperextending anything, dumping into any joints, collapsing through your shoulders? Or are you keeping that space and that integrity and that strength that is supple but supported? Coming back to table, we're going to throw in some side flexion again by bringing right hip towards right shoulder. Come back through center, left hip towards left shoulder. Coming back through center, one more time to the right. One more time to the left. And back through to table. Now we are going to come back down to our bellies, but rather than doing a spinal extension that's supported by the arms, we are going to revisit our locust pose. So you're going to start with your forehead resting on the floor. Mine's going to be raised because of my mic. Arms are down alongside of the body, legs are straight out behind you, and to whatever height feels manageable for you. You are just going to begin to lift your head and chest away from the floor. Your hands and forearms might start to lift, your lower legs might start to lift. And over time, within your abilities, the goal is to eventually work your way towards bowing or bowing away from the floor and getting some good height between the floor and your legs and your arms and your chest and head. But there's no point overdoing it just for the sake of overdoing it. Listen to your body, and we're going to let everything come down. Okay, we're just going to take a moment to do some resting in child's pose again. Countering that spinal extension that we just did. And once again, we are going to come forward to our belly, doing some spinal extension, but this time we are going to play with Cobra. So hands are kind of stacked just below the shoulder joints. You can prepare through your pelvis however you might feel you need to, and when you're ready, begin to lift yourself into a bit more back extension. Now, you can use your elbows to decide how upright you go. And just remember that your bum does not need to be squeezing. We're keeping the shoulders low out of the ears. And we're going to come back down. Now, from this position, you can stack your fists, stack your hands, rest your forehead on your hands if you want to. We are going to bring the right leg up out to the side and revisit that one-legged frog we did a little while ago in a previous video. And again, just remember that there's a couple ways that you can make this a little more comfortable. You can build your torso up off the ground so that your knee has to angle down towards the floor a little bit. You could not bring the knee up quite as high. You can bend the knee more so that the foot is sort of in towards the leg that has remained straight. Or if you are quite flexible and you're not feeling a lot, you're going to bring the leg up a bit more to the side. That knee is going to be about 90 degrees angle so that your lower leg and foot are parallel with the outstretched leg. And you're just belly on the floor. There's lots of ways that postures and movements can be modified to suit all different levels and all different abilities. It's just a matter of being creative and not feeling shy about doing something a little bit different. So we're just going to spend a couple more breaths here. All right, you can start to send that right leg down. We are going to grab blocks and get ready for low lunge and half split. So placing your hands on the mat, you can push up into tabletop, have those blocks nearby. I like to use mine on the highest setting for this one. We are going to start by stepping the right foot forward so that we can lunge forward into a low lunge. And use the blocks to make your arms really long so that you can keep some nice length through the spine, staying upright and open across the chest, long through the neck. without your shoulders scrunching up around your ears. So in this position, you are probably feeling a pretty good stretch through the front of your left hip and thigh, most likely. And we can walk the blocks in our hands back, bringing the toes, the ball of the foot, the right foot off the floor. We're still kind of leaning forward. We're not sitting right down on that left foot because it's very hard to get up if you go too low. But we're just getting a nice stretchy sensation along the back line of the right leg, the front leg. And play with pulling that right hip back. If you find that your hip has stayed kind of forward, pull it back so that your pelvis is square to the front of the mat. We're going to step it forward into a low lunge again. Step it back into half split. Now, as we move forward into the low lunge again, we are going to bring the right block and hand to the inside of the right foot that is in front. We're going to come forward into a low lunge, and you can kind of heel toe your foot out to the side a little bit. That way your foot's out of the way that you can put the blocks stacked underneath both shoulders. And we're going to come into a bit of a low lunge again, but the one leg is sort of off to the side. You can also, keeping that ankle strong, just turn over that outer edge of the foot. You can start to let that right knee tip out to the side as well. So for me, my knee is tipping towards my camera here to come into a lizard. This is kind of a tall lizard, a high lizard. For those that are much more flexible, you can start to lower yourself down towards the floor. Some people can even get down to forearms on the floor. I personally kind of just like to stay up high. I'm kind of just wanting to target my hips anyways, and this is getting most of the job done for me today. So I'm just going to go ahead and stay here. A couple more breaths. And then we're going to take a little bit of a rest in child's pose. We're going to revisit our Cobra for another foray with back extension, and then we're going to go through the half frog, low lunge, and all that on the left side. Okay, so start to bring that knee back in. You can walk your blocks wherever you need to make yourself feel stable, to get yourself back into a tabletop-like position. We're just going to set the blocks off to the side for now, coming back into our wide-legged child's pose, just to take a breather. All right, let's come forward onto the belly. Stacking hands just below the shoulders. Getting yourself ready through your lower body, your pelvis, your back, whatever works best for you. And we're going to push up into a cobra. All right, we can lower back down. So again, you can stack your fists, stack your hands, whatever you want. Let your head and neck fully relax. I'm just keeping mine up because of the mic. The right leg is going to stay out back this time, and the left leg is going to come up alongside of you, and you can match what you did on the other side. If this side moves better than your right did, you can stay a little deeper. If this side is stickier than your right was, you can support yourself up more than you did before. Honor what your body wants on either side. regardless of what the other side needed, regardless of what you were able to do yesterday, our bodies fluctuate every single day. Our skeletons are not symmetrical. Things are going to feel different every day, and it may not always be the same on both sides of your body. So that's perfectly normal. You just kind of do what your body needs you to do. All right, we can bring that leg back down and get the blocks nearby again, because we're going to be popping back up onto our hands and knees and revisiting that low lunge half split on the left side. So have your blocks ready. We're going to step the left foot forward, and we're going to sink into that low lunge. So this time, the low lunge, you're going to feel a bit of a stretch across the front of the right hip and the right thigh. Again, keeping that length through the spine. Shoulders are down, nice and open across the chest. We can walk the blocks back. Coming up on the heel of that left foot, getting that nice yummy stretch down the back line of the left leg, and just check where that left hip wound up. Can you pull it back to keep it square with the mat? Walking it forward, coming back into the low lunge. So one of the main differences between the low lunge and lizard is in low lunge, the feet are more hip width distance apart. Whereas in lizard, we have kind of a wider stance. The feet are further, the feet are further away from each other. They're closer to either side of the mat, which is what allows the one hand to be on the inside of the leg. We can step the blocks back, coming back into the half splits. And for this one, I am going to rotate just so you can see this transition from a different angle. You can see how my legs are kind of hip width distance apart. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my left hand and block to the inside of my left foot. I'm going to lunge forward, and then I'm going to heel and toe my foot out to the side so that I can stack my hands and blocks under my shoulders again. And now you can see that my feet are in a much wider stance. And if this is enough for you, then that's totally fine. But what we can also do is send that knee out to the side. And this is where lizard starts to really mimic aspects of pigeon, right? We've got that one leg straight out back behind us, lots of opening through the front of this hip joint and thigh. We've got the other leg out in front of us, bent at the knee. We're letting it flop out to the side. We're just not as deep into pigeon as we would need to be in order to have the shin on the floor and, you know, hips right down towards the floor. All right, we can bring that knee back in. Start to rock your hips back, get your blocks out of the way that you can bring the leg in. We're going to get back into tabletop. And then coming back to the wide-legged child's pose, just to rest again for a moment after doing a couple of harder positions. Coming through tabletop to the belly for one more Cobra. So hands stack under shoulders, lifting up. Lowering back down. And now we're going to get into a seated position on the floor. So whatever way works best for you to get yourself there, you can just go ahead and do. It doesn't need to be some fancy orchestrated transition. So we're going to play with the seated figure 4. So leaning back a little bit, knees are bent, feet on the floor. We're going to bring the right ankle to knee. And first just play with some rotations. You can kind of bring the knee in towards your chest, away from the chest. That right ankle is still resting on the left knee, but we're just kind of waving that leg. And then you can start to play with scooting your bum closer and closer to that foot that's still on the floor. Each time you scoot, take a break and just play with that rotation. I don't know if you can really see it from this angle. You can try scooting a bit more if that feels like it's available in your body. And once you've gotten to how far you're going to go into this, you can eventually just relax and let that knee kind of move away from your chest. Just pay attention though if to keep going, if you have to start really pushing harder or forcing it, or if your whole body starts to move away. We don't want it to start turning into a full body movement. We are literally wanting to just rotate the hip, the thigh bone in the hip socket. Now, this might be hard on your wrists, in which case if you have something you can build up behind you to kind of put your elbows on, but you can also just go ahead and do this on your back on the floor in that other kind of normal, so to speak, figure 4 position. Okay, so we're gonna scoot the bum away, bring that right foot back to the floor. You can kind of wiggle out the legs for a second. And then we'll get set up to do the other side. I'm going to try rotating away in a way that you might be able to see what I'm doing with my legs. So my right foot's going to stay on the floor. My left ankle is going to come to my left knee. And I'm going to wave this knee. You can see that. It's sometimes hard to tell when I look at the screen on the camera. It looks like things are small and hard to tell, but then when I'm actually editing the video later, it has actually clearer. It's funny. Okay, we're gonna try scooting the bum a bit closer to that foot that's on the floor, if that feels available to you in your body. And again, and just honor your limits. Just because I'm doing something doesn't mean that you have to do it exactly the same way. That is not the point of this channel. It's all about exploration and learning what your body needs and wants. Okay, and eventually you can just kind of rest into it for a second. Okay, we can move the bum away from that foot, get the ankle off the knee, wiggle the legs out. And now we are just going to come down to the floor for a nice Shavasana. If you want to put something under your knees or put a blanket on top of you or do whatever you need to do to be as comfy as possible, you're more than welcome to. I'm just going to keep it simple here for myself. All right, you are welcome to stay here in this Shavasana for as long as you would like to. But when you are ready, just take some time to begin wiggling your fingers and your toes and shaking your head side to side, eventually bringing in your knees, giving yourself a little hug, a little rock side to side on your back. And then you can turn onto a side and help yourself up to sit. And then just take a moment to see how this practice has landed in your body, how your spine is feeling, how your hips are feeling, and I will see you in the next flow.